Welcome to Copilots, the podcast where we watch not just the first episode of a show,
but also the second. Some shows don't have the best pilot episode, and giving it that second chance might just change your mind.
Here we take that chance for you and let you know our opinion on if a show deserves more than one shot.
I'm Justice. Alongside me is my co-pilot Josh. Now, let's get ready for takeoff. Your in-flight entertainment this week will be Being Human.
No, we did that last week, on the last flight. We did that on the last flight.
Yes, but you also told them we were doing it on this flight for some fucking reason.
Oh, yeah. And we're also going to do it on another flight here shortly.
No, that's a different show.
Becoming Human, Being Human, they're the same thing.
They're different shows, but because you told them we were doing the same show again, I found a different version of the show that we can do, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's British this time.
Is that what that sound was?
Yeah. The first one was Canadian, although it took place in Boston. This one is British and takes place in England. Not Britain, but specifically England. I don't know if those are synonyms or not. I know Great Britain and England aren't synonyms.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I find hilarious, though? So, when looking up Being Human, I can find the version that aired on Sci-Fi listed as Being Human US.
Yes.
Mainly when reading it up, something about it in an American journal or review or site or whatever. But if I find a Canadian one, they're much nicer in including everyone, and it's Being Human NA, North America.
To be fair, it should be Being Human CA, because it's
it's definitely more Canada than the US, but every fucking US publication I've seen, it's just Being Human US. And I'm just I feel like we're claiming something that's not ours once again.
We do that a lot.
Yeah.
So we're reviewing episodes 1 and 2 of Being Human UK.
Yes.
We're not reviewing episode 0.
Yeah, I found something that listed episode 0 as a pilot, but it might have just been a script for, an initial script.
So they did film it.
Okay.
It exists. It came out almost a year and a half before the first episode did.
Okay, I couldn't find it on the video. I tried to.
Because of how long there was between the series actually getting picked up and airing and the pilot, a lot of the actors left, but also because there was a rewrite and a tonal shift.
Yeah.
A lot of other actors left, and also because the casting company could only sign them for 1 year at a time, which is why they have troubles later on in the series.
Makes sense.
A lot of them, their contracts expired and they got other jobs, and they're like, no.
I'm busy. I have a job.
Yeah.
You had me wait a year and a half. That's not happening.
Toby Whithouse, the show creator, though, says that episode is still canon, even though it's tonally different and features mostly a different cast. The only person that carries over is the actor that plays George.
George is just the guy who's in it for the long haul.
Yeah, until he leaves.
George's actor's in it all the way through all 5 series, from my understanding.
Okay. I thought he left at one point.
No. I'm pretty sure everyone but George from the 3 main characters and a few other main cast members leave.
That brings me to my next point. People refer to episode 0 as The Monster Within.
Okay.
And people refer to episode 1 as Flotsam and Jetsam, but neither of those are actually the episode's names.
Oh, neat.
The episodes don't have names. Series 1 and 2 don't have names for their episodes.
Understandable. That does mean ITV has lied to me?
Toby Whithouse ran a fan poll on his blog. Again, he's the creator of the show. And Flotsam and Jetsam won, but is not officially, according to the production company, the name of the episode.
Makes sense.
So, episode 1, entitled Episode 1, or Flotsam and Jetsam, it's up for debate.
Look, we're talking about the show. We're not talking about fanon. It's episode 1.
So, if you listen to our last episode, you'll be familiar with the premise of Being Human. A ghost, a werewolf, and a vampire all move in together.
Yeah, as they're wanting to do.
Cue drama and comedy. In the Canadian or US version, our point of view characters might be said to be Josh and Aiden, the werewolf and vampire.
Yeah.
At least for episode 1 of the British version.
So, both the UK and the US version episodes start with intros from characters.
Mm-hmm.
And in the US version, because, you were saying, Aiden and Josh. Aiden and Josh.
Sam and Sam.
Well, I was going to say Aiden and Josh the second time, but you fucking, came in to correct me, and it just threw me off.
So in the US version,
Aiden and Josh do feel like more of our insert for our lens, our view into the world.
yeah, because it's an American show, and American shows can only have viewpoints for men, or they're not shows.
I mean, true.
That's not my belief. That's really what it feels like Hollywood tells us.
Yeah, he mentions that because, as I was about to say, we start this episode with a narration from Annie, our Sally.
And if that's confusing for you, it means you didn't listen to the last episode. Sally was the ghost in the US being human. Her name is Annie. And while her story arc is mostly the same over these 2 episodes, she is a decidedly different character.
Yeah, I mean, they're all decidedly different characters.
Mm-hmm.
She is, I would argue, the most different.
Yeah.
So we start with a intro from Annie talking about how everyone dies. Everyone deserves a death.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will get a death. Well, I guess maybe not everyone. And so in her narration, we see her laying on the floor, blood leaking from the back of her skull. And then when she says, well, not everyone dies, we see Mitchell.
John Mitchell, yep.
Mitchell, the Aiden on the UK version.
He's our vampire.
Yes. We see him in, I think, World War One?
Or 2, it's hard to tell.
Well, I think it's World War One, because when we see him in this era, he's standing in front of a World War One monument. So
it's a World War One and World War II monument. It has 1945 on it.
yeah, but also the helmets looked older, and the uniforms looked older.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was World War One.
His gun did have a bayonet on it. I don't think that was a World War II
Yeah,
thing.
and also they made a joke about how they were killing people's empires 50 years ago, which would have been before a part of World War II, because the show came out in 2008. I think they said like 59 years ago or some shit. So like,
yeah, okay.
but he gets turned into a vampire there. And then Annie continues on and mentions that also, though, some people cheat death. They manage to get away from it, but it leaves them scarred. They're survivors. And what are they supposed to do with what's left? And in that time period, we see George, our Josh, so our werewolf, getting attacked and brutalized by something. It's a werewolf. Whoever could guess.
Yeah.
And then she ends up by saying, well, if they're lucky, if there's mercy, they find each other.
Yeah, the quick rundown here would be everybody deserves death. Some people never die. Some people should have died. Some people did die.
Yeah. And during this time period, as she's narrating, we're seeing their backstories.
Mm-hmm.
We see also that George and Mitchell are unpacking their car and moving into a new house.
Yes.
Which we'd seen more of from Annie's perspective as she was at her own wake, trying to interact with people.
Because, as she tells us in this opening, being a ghost is insanely lonely.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the actual episode proper, because they've moved into the house. Annie watches them move in. She's actually watched multiple other people move in, but like
yeah, and then they would move out.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were moving in, George seemed to have caught sight of something. She ducked out of a window, so he looked away. Then she moved again. He thought he caught her. It looked like he thought he caught something in his eyesight again. So
yeah, we also get a bit of flashbacks or like cuts between Mitchell and George here. George going out into the woods and transforming into a werewolf.
Oh, sorry, I forgot something in the montage. So we saw Mitchell get turned. We also see him with this show's Rebecca.
Yeah, her name is Lauren.
Yeah, in the same sex and then drink blood thing that he did before.
Yeah, he killed her.
Yeah, and he even hits a really similar pose on the floor.
Although, it's interesting, I think in the UK versions, it's implied that he actually did turn her.
It is very unclear because from the way they talk about a thing later, it to me implies that it would be an almost immediate affair, whereas that would imply then that he didn't turn her because he...
Yeah, she does say she woke up surrounded by strangers.
Yeah, so.
It's...
unclear.
So we cut from that montage
Yep.
to the 3 of them living together. It's kind of already been an established like relationship between the 3 of them.
Yeah, it is an indiscriminate amount of time since they moved in.
Mm-hmm.
They all seem like they kind of know each other pretty well at this point.
And Annie has went from being able to only be seen by supernatural creatures like a werewolf and a vampire to being able to be seen and being able to interact with the world by some people. Not all people, but some people.
Yeah, and this is demonstrated legitimately with our first actual scene, because after this montage, we get a black screen and then the Being Human title card offset to the right. And then a door opens and she just starts chattering away at the pizza delivery guy that they have had deliver food to them.
Because also in this version, the vampire can eat.
Yeah, you can. Also, most importantly, he can piss. He states he has to go piss. And we see him journey to a bathroom on 3 different occasions. Once is to shower, fine. But the 2 other times, one is mentioned as a clear decoration of a piss. He also mentions he has to piss at another point, but and then the third one is unclear.
I think you're going to have to clarify why this is important to you, because I don't think this was ever covered on the podcast.
Yes, it was.
Was it?
Yes, I edited the episode, I'm aware.
Okay.
I had my piss conversation. I wanted to know what happened to the blood. Because urea is basically just urine. Urea is the largest fluid component of your blood, basically.
So vampires and being human, the British version, do pee.
Yes. Now, though, that we know they can actually consume food, the next question arises. Do British vampires shit?
They obviously have to.
I would assume so.
Yeah, okay. We also get the issue here where, as Mitchell is eating the pizza, Annie offers to go make them tea, and George, the werewolf, freaks out. He's like, you can't make any more tea. All the cups are gone.
You just keep making tea. That's all you do.
Tea and coffee. All you do. You can't even drink it.
I go to make tea, and I can't. There's no mugs left. There's no tea left. It's insane. And then it's just like, it gives me a daily schedule. It gives me a thing to do.
I don't have things to do, so I make tea.
Yep.
Which is insane. It literally is insane.
Yeah.
She can interact with the world. She could watch TV or read or
use the internet.
It's 2008.
I mean, the internet exists. YouTube is around. It's not viable.
They have a cathode ray TV, cathode tube TV, CRT. They have a CRT. They don't have internet in their apartment house. Also, the cell phones they have, still have keyboards, Tech 9 style keyboards. Yeah. God, 2008 was so long ago.
Hey, they could have had a sidekick or something if they wanted to. They just didn't have the budget for it in the show.
Or they just didn't have them in Britain. I'm not for sure.
I mean, also, it's entirely possible that, I don't know, a porter, so an orderly, and a cleaning service, so a janitor, they probably don't make the most money at the hospital, which, that is the thing. Mitchell is not a nurse in this series, it seems. He is a janitor.
We get explicitly called out in episode 2 that porters make minimum wage. Mm-hmm. So we just gotta Google what minimum wage was in Britain.
Look, I don't care. In any capitalistic country, minimum wage is never what you really need. So I stand by my statement. They don't have the money for a sidekick.
Well, it was $5.73. It was £5.73, sorry. And this calculator says in today money, well, I don't know how to use this calculator. So it's what, $7 an hour? Like minimum wage in the US right now?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. I know you don't care. It was interesting to me though, and that is no money. They're making nothing.
Yeah.
So you're right. Even if they did have sidekicks, they couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to tangent off.
So then both Mitchell and George grab their bags because they're headed out to work.
Which is the weirdest. Why would you order pizza with so little time between the pizza getting there and work? If you
I assume they ordered it for the ghost. I think maybe she can smell.
We know she can't eat or drink, but
maybe she can smell the pizza.
If you call the pizza place and you're like, hey, I need a pizza, and they're like,
honestly, if they're working night shift and for some fucking reason no pizza place around them is open after they get off, they could have just gotten and be like, I'm gonna grab a piece of pizza for breakfast. I'm putting the rest in the fridge for food when I get home. And honestly, respectable forethought.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
I guess what you're saying makes sense. Although they do live in a large British city, I'm sure that there are places open when they get off work.
I don't fucking know.
I don't either.
There are major metropolitan areas that have no restaurants or stores really open after night.
Yeah, but if they're working night shift, they'll get off in the morning.
I mean, it depends. We don't know what their night shift schedule is.
Fair enough. But yeah, they order the pizza and Mitchell eats a slice and then they go to work.
Yeah, and as they're leaving in, he's just like, oh, so you're both heading out? And they're like, yeah, we have work.
We have these things.
And then Mitchell's like, and also, it's his time of the month, and slaps George on the chest, with the back of his hand slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And slaps George on the back, and slaps George on his chest lightly, playfully.
And then Annie's like, oh man, that's the best part about being dead. I do not miss that at all.
I would get a hot water bottle, curl up on the sofa with a snack, and watch the telly.
And if anybody tried to talk to me, I would bite their head off.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's a thing that could actually happen with you, isn't it?
That's a little insensitive, isn't it? I'm sorry. But they do mention that he has a room in the hospital like Josh in America.
Yeah.
He's in my brain, these shows are happening concurrently. Like Josh in America, he also has a room in the hospital that is abandoned and safe to transform in. Mm-hmm. And so the plan is... You can't say that while we're recording, that's evidence.
I delete it. It's only evidence if I do it.
And so the plan is that George will work for about an hour and then be like, hey, I gotta go. I got a family emergency. And then go lock himself in a room. And after work, Mitchell will go down there and let him out.
Yep. And then Mitchell and George arrive at the hospital in what seems like the most like open to the rest of the building fucking locker room ever.
Yeah, it's like right at like where two holes connect and there's no door for it or anything.
I mean, there's some double doors leading like what looks to be further into the hospital, so maybe the other hallway is like a staff only entrance, and those two double doors are never both closed.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe they're not supposed to change there. They're just like supposed to like drop their stuff off.
Yeah, but I mean, like at no point do either of these two put in a combination or anything for their locker. They just open it and get things in and out.
Yeah, because it's not America where you have to worry about people stealing all your shit all the time.
I don't know.
I'm assuming...
My understanding of London is you just get stabbed when it's nighttime. And they call you a wanker as they rob you.
This isn't London, though. It's Bristol. I don't know anything
There's
about...
more than one place in England?
Yeah,
it's so small, though.
There's Manchester and there's London, and apparently there's Bristol.
No, you're thinking of Brighton. Brighton's the other one.
There's also Blackpool.
No, that's made up. That's wrestling stuff.
No, Blackpool is, from what I understand, the dirtier, scummier version of Las Vegas, but in England.
There's no deserts in England.
I didn't say it was a desert.
It can't be dirtier without all the dust.
I don't mean like physically dirty. Well,
Nope.
I do kind of mean physically dirtier too.
Anyways, though, as they're coming in, George is just like, he's just complaining about Anne. He's like, why is she even there? When other people move in, they might have like, it might be damp, there might be like wood lice or pests or other things. We have a ghost. Why? Why do we have a ghost?
And then Mitchell, who I keep wanting to call Aiden.
Yeah.
Is like, look, she just needs to move on. It's not like we can't make her go. She has unfinished business, which
And then George is just like, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not right. And he's just like, Mitchell's like, yeah, it's really not. Like, it sucks for her. I think I figured out what it is. So just ignore. I'll just keep turning it off.
I know what it is. It's the Xbox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we continue now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mitchell, having turned that around and being like, man, it's super unfair to her to like have died and now be stuck here. And George is like, no, I mean, it's unfair to us.
And Mitchell's like, oh yeah, you're right. My bad. Yeah, no, she's a person. She gets to live here. It's fine.
Yeah, and then
live.
This is Will. Mitchell just ignores the rest of the conversation. She's like, so what's the plan? And that's where we learn that George is going to fake a family emergency so he can go wolf out.
Mm-hmm. And I think rather than like being like she gets to live here, this is where they get interrupted by a nurse.
Well, no.
No.
They stopped that conversation.
Okay.
Mitchell actively sidestepped it and was like, what are you going to do tonight?
Okay, that's right.
Mitchell was like, George is being ridiculous. I'm not going to engage.
And then they run into a nurse.
Yeah.
Who we don't get her name yet, but I think her name was Becca.
I don't think we get that yet.
I said we don't get it yet, but I'm pretty sure her name is Becca.
No, I don't think we get her scene yet. I think it's Mitchell and Seth first.
Mitchell and Seth first, yes. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Mitchell and Seth.
Because as George and Mitchell walk out, Mitchell clocks a guy heading into a patient's room.
And then follows him in.
Yeah, it's a vampire. It fills the same role in the US version as the not Bishop vampire.
Oh yeah, because Mitchell sees it on one of the...
Yeah, he sees it on a security camera.
And when I say he sees it on a security camera, he distinctly sees
nothing.
A door open and close on its own.
Yeah.
Because vampires in the British version can't be seen on film or in mirrors. Or,
yeah.
So yeah, then we get the Mitchell and Seth confrontation, which is the exact same as... It plays out the exact same way it does in the American version between Aiden and...
Except with more of a focus on how they can target political or strong business targets and turn them into vampires.
Although, in this case, Seth hasn't done his research because he's just like, I think this guy's a councilman, so I'm going to turn him.
Yeah.
Their fight is a little less impactful than the US version.
Yeah, I mean, we also get a slightly different motive for their bishop, whose name is Herrick. And it's that Herrick wants to give the people a choice. He wants them to actively recruit them and inform people that they're a vampire. Let me turn you into a vampire.
He wants to take the masquerade away.
Yeah.
He wants to step out of the shadow, which is, from my understanding of the history in Vampire the Masquerade, a terrible idea. Whenever vampire societies do this, and typically it's the Sabbath that does it, humans very quickly murder the vampires.
Yeah.
Because there's more of them.
Mm-hmm. This is when we get a mention of Mitchell having turned Lauren, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Because Seth says that Lauren's a much better pick than like the normal tramps and like homeless people.
Which I guess is because she's a nurse.
I think he just finds her attractive, is what he's saying.
Oh, I assumed it was because she was a nurse.
Nah, Seth gives Will vibes.
This show has characters that give those vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Seth's trying to convince Mitchell to let him drain this possible councilman. Who knows? And Mitchell's just like, no, I've stopped. And Seth tries to push his luck, so Mitchell slams him against the wall and then throws him out of the room.
and tells him the hospital is off limits.
Yeah. Seth does briefly talk about some of their past kills, but it doesn't really matter.
We don't get a lot of details, just years and essentially
the victim type.
Yeah, him and Herrick have always been like chummy pals.
Yep.
This is when we meet Becca.
Yes.
Yeah, because
George talking to her, and then Mitchell will show up later.
Yeah, because George needs to go transform, but he's being stopped and having a conversation with Becca because I don't remember this conversation was.
She's really she's telling a story, and he's listening and talking to her.
Yeah, and then Mitchell shows up and is like, "Hey, don't you need to be gone?"
Yeah.
And George is like, "Oh yeah," and then stays there, continues listening. Mitchell goes, "Whenever you're ready, or on your own time, or something."
Though before Mitchell interrupts them, so they're having a conversation. She's just telling George about something. As they walk by, they see a memorial like poster board up for Lauren, and then she asks him if he knew anything, and he's like, "Yeah, she worked here. Like she died like a month before you started.
Yeah, 6 months ago, which means episode 0 takes place." Or aspects of episode 0 take place 6 months-ish before episode 1 proper.
Yeah, probably. So George takes off, and then Mitchell tries to kind of leave, but Becca, who had been like trying to join their conversation that they had just started, was like, because when George says, "Oh, I have to leave," Becca's like, "Oh, I was saying I have break in 10 minutes," and then when he runs off, Mitchell's like, "Okay, I gotta go," and she's like, "Well, I've got break in 10 minutes," and we cut from that scene, so assumably he just shuts that down.
No, because they get coffee together. Well, they're in the cafeteria together getting coffee.
Oh yeah,
because George then goes down to his secret room, and there's a bunch of construction workers in there.
Because British bureaucracy is apparently more efficient than U.S. bureaucracy. Because while both shows have plans to turn these into like more administrative wings, the British version is trucking along.
Indeed,
they have people working around in there. The workman on site's complaining. He's like, "They want to turn this into an office." And it trust me, this thing's trash. There's junk everywhere torn apart. There's deep gouges in the wall. What, are they throwing the crazies down here?
Yeah, which it's because George has been transforming down there. So George panics and runs back upstairs to the cafeteria where he finds Mitchell, and he's like...
Mitchell, who has up until this moment been zoning out of whatever the fucking Becca's been saying, is just like hearing heartbeat and being like, "I could drink blood right now." Blood sounds really good right now.
But he's trying not to, so he's also like shaking really badly, and when she's like, "Why are you shaking so badly?" He's like, "Oh, I
recently quit smoking."
Yep. And then she's like trying to ask him out, ask if he's single.
Yeah.
And then George shows up and he's like, "Can I have a minute? I'll be right back." And he goes to talk to George. He's like, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be in your room. You're supposed to be transforming." And George is like, "There are people in the room. We have to find someplace else."
Yeah.
And so Mitchell just leaves with George without like saying anything to Becca, which I get because your buddy's about to turn into a werewolf in a hospital full of people. But at the same time, like you were just like, "I'll be back in 1 minute." You could just call across the room and be like, "Hey, look, something came up. I have to go. Bye."
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's amazing. So Mitchell ends up driving George out to the woods, the forest nearby, somewhere outside Bristol, because even though he's trying to convince George to just transform in the house, because it'd be safer for everyone, George is convinced that the woods is where it's safest to transform, and so George gets out of the car and starts running through the woods, and he immediately runs into a group of teens with a campfire.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, hi, good night, yeah. Have fun."
Then he runs into a guy walking his dog. And then he runs into a couple making out.
Yep.
And then he runs into a weird dude in a white hat who's like, "Hey, I know who you are." And George is like, "Nope."
And just takes off.
Yep.
And he loops around the side of the forest, and he's still running. And then we cut back to Mitchell, who is trying to start the car, and he is starting to flood it, honestly.
And as he's like gets the car started, George is like, no wait, and like jumps in the car.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I reconsidered. You're right. The house is safer." This was all a bit, which...
And the entire time, a great Arctic Monkeys song was playing, so...
Yeah, it was all a good bit, with Arctic Monkeys music in the background.
So they go back to the house, and immediately take anything of importance out of the living room, by which I mean just the CRT.
Well, they take like some glass stuff and put it in the kitchen, like...
No, they go to take some glass stuff and put it in the kitchen, when George is struck by his first, like, sharp pain of transformation, and he drops said glass things.
And he still takes a vase from him and sets it in the kitchen, because she hides behind the vase later.
Oh yeah, you're right.
But
they save one vase.
But Mitchell grabs the TV and just goes outside with it. And sits on the porch step, hugging the TV. There's a brief, like, I wouldn't call it an argument, but a brief confrontation here where he's like, "Can I watch you transform?"
And he's like, George is like, "No, that's extremely personal."
And Mitchell's like, "Yeah, but we're trying to like embrace the whole thing and like be human. And, like, you can't really like even call yourself a werewolf without freaking out. So maybe this is one of those things.
Mitchell doesn't go to that point immediately. First, Annie is like, well, I'm a ghost and you're here all the time. That's really personal for me. You see me as a ghost. And then Mitchell's like, well, I mean, you are a werewolf. And then he gets to the point.
Yeah. And like, you're never going to even like refer to yourself as a werewolf. So maybe like embracing that would be good for you.
So George cares and he's like, fine, but stay out of his line of sight. I don't know what it'll do if it sees you.
And so she goes and hides in the kitchen and peeks over the counter. They have like a little window to the kitchen.
Yeah, it's a really weird.
Like, it would make sense if this was a restaurant and that was like a place you would order food.
No, it's not even a good pass through or a good order window. It's like the smallest, shittiest cutout.
It would be a fine order window.
I disagree.
But yeah, so she's sitting back there, and then George fully transforms. The transformation sequence is very good. That's true.
Yeah.
And then once he stops screaming, and he's like, George. And
then he turns to face her to snap over, and it is the most rubbery looking mask that then looks like it's been coated in like the thinnest layer of latex.
It's hilarious. It's hilariously bad.
Honestly, it's like an 80s movie werewolf or wolfman outfit, but shot on a modern camera, so it looks a lot worse.
I'm laughing, but the UK version was made on a shoestring budget compared to the Canadian version.
Yeah, it's understandable. Like, I don't have an issue with it. It was just unexpected, and I did have to immediately rewind to see it again.
Like, the Canadian version was slated for a season 5.
Yeah.
But they were going to get their budget cut in half.
So they said no.
So they said, no, we'll just do a season 4 and finish it there.
Yeah. But when he turns to face her, Annie gets frightened and poofs out of the house to join Mitchell on the stoop.
And she's like, he's gone. George isn't there anymore.
Yeah. So then we cut to the morning, and they walk back in the door, and the apartment is legitimately just wrecked. Luckily, they did stack some chairs and things to stop him from going upstairs. They blocked off the door, so he was literally just kind of trapped in the living room.
Yeah, the living room and the foyer.
Yeah.
And he destroyed it all.
Yeah, absolutely destroyed. They had a bookshelf, they had a stereo system, they have none of that anymore.
So they spend the morning cleaning up, but like they have to hurry about it because, as we find out in the next scene, when George finally wakes up, their landlord is coming. He's in town from the Middle East.
Yes, Owen, Annie's ex-fiance, also known as the Danny of the Being Human UK version.
I don't know. I wonder if he killed her in this version.
I'm gonna go with yes, because it was seen in the next episode.
Fair enough. Yeah, he's just coming over to get a feel for what they need from him while he's in town.
Yeah.
And the big thing is the sink sometimes doesn't run.
It makes a weird tapping noise and a gurgle, and then it'll run after they leave it open for a while.
See, in the US version, it does that because Sally's ring has fallen into the sink and is causing issues. And it's not just like causing issues because it's the ring blocking the plumbing, but because of like ghost energy. Like even though
because her ring is still upstairs in the bathroom sink.
Yeah. And ghost energy is connected to that, and like even though she doesn't know. But I don't think that can be the case with Annie.
No idea.
Annie is seen wearing her wedding rings, her engagement ring still.
Sure.
Yeah, you didn't notice?
I wasn't paying much attention.
Fair enough. I only noticed it because it's such a pivotal plot point for the American version.
True.
Sorry. I know I touched on spoilers for the US version.
That's not even why I stopped. There was sound.
Oh, how much do I need to redo or?
None, you're fine now. I literally just had that pause to let that sound bleed out.
Yeah, sorry. I know I just touched on spoilers for the US version, but like it seemed noticeable for me, like as somebody who's seen all the US version and loves it.
Yeah, understandable.
But yeah, essentially Mitchell and Owen have a beer together while George goes upstairs to keep Annie from freaking out.
I was going to talk about their conversation before Owen showed up.
Fair enough.
Because when George finds out, he rightly freaks out because Annie can be seen by people.
Not all people, though.
Yeah, but they're not sure if Owen will be able to see her or not, and it's a bad idea if he can fucking see his dead fiance.
Living with his 2 new tenants, yeah.
Yeah, so George is rightly freaked out. He's like, Mitchell, why the fuck would you even agree to that? And Mitchell's response is, she kicked me in the shin. The shin! And then Annie hands Mitchell a notepad filled with questions to ask. Like, oh, has my sister had a baby yet? Because they've been trying for a long time. Are you fucking Jenny Harris? Things like that. And both George and Mitchell, very much like in the US Being Human, realize they can't really stop Annie. So they're like, up the stairs. Go on, the stairs.
Upstairs. And so once Owen gets there, Annie eventually makes a loud thump.
Yes.
And George is like, I'm going to go see what that thumping noise was.
Because George is the most awkward person in the situation, despite stressing to Mitchell how much they had to pretend to be normal.
Just like Josh and Aiden.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. It seems like you get better at being less awkward around people if you have 100 years to practice.
Or if you know an issue comes up, you can just drink some of their blood and then hypnosis them into forgetting.
Or drink all of their blood and feed them some of yours and make them your, like...
Bitch.
Yeah. Like, now you have...
You are my thrall, except it's not really a thrall, but look, man, there are other vampires and you kind of have to listen to them or they're going to kill you.
Yeah, like, I guess when you have that out in every social situation...
Yeah. You can just feel pretty confident. It's like,
as long as the social situation isn't, like, more than, like, 15 people...
Look, if I'm a vampire and I'm at, like, I don't know, a fucking movie theater and I buy a ticket and the cashier says, enjoy your movie, and I say, you too, as a vampire, that's an excuse to just be like, well, you gotta die now. Don't worry, you'll come back as a vampire, but, like, not having this moment here. Too awkward. We're done now.
Like when a waitress or a waiter gives you your food and they're like, enjoy your meal, and you're like, oh, you too.
And then your brain immediately goes, I got my next victim, I guess.
You would kill so many people as a vampire.
No, because I don't normally respond to people.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But then George goes upstairs to stop Annie from making noise. And when he finally, then Mitchell and Owen share a beer together.
Yep.
Talk about the problems in the house, which is mostly just the plumbing. And then George comes back downstairs, and when Owen's like, so what was the banging noise? Do I need to look at anything?
I mean, I wanted to talk about Annie and George's conversation upstairs because I found it amusing.
You do you.
So upstairs, we're just like, what the hell are you doing? What's that noise? And Annie's just like, I just want to see him. And George's replies, if you see him, he might die of shock. And he gets like, huh, like, kind of look on her face.
Initially, she's like, that would be bad. And then she immediately starts like smiling and being like, oh.
And George's like, that is not going to happen. And then he goes back downstairs. Yeah.
See, I don't remember the granular details of the conversations, so I'm glad you do, because that scene is actually hilarious.
Yeah,
the dialogue there.
It's like somewhere along that. I don't remember what George's exact response is, but he's very much against it.
If he sees you, he will die of shock. She's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But when George comes back downstairs, Owen's like, so what was that? Do I need to look at anything upstairs? And George is just like panicking. He's like, it was a pigeon. I must have left a window open.
Yeah, and Owen's like, a pigeon? And George is like, yeah, it's fine. I dealt with it. Did you get it outside? I killed it.
With a shoe.
Yeah. While George and Annie were having their conversation upstairs, though, Mitchell has the same conversation with Owen that both Josh and Aiden had with Danny about how the house has a good vibe.
Yeah, and he's
good echo.
He's like, are you sure? Everybody else has said it's been like bad and oppressive
and Mitchell insists that it's good. Because he tells Owen about the tap, and Owen's just like, peace, I'll be back to fix it.
Yeah, because like Owen is like, my fiance died in this house. Like a lot of people say they can feel like the negative energy of that. And Mitchell's all like, nah, it's great. The house is good vibes.
Yeah, you can feel an echo of a person, and they're good vibes. They're good vibes. It's a good echo.
So then, while Mitchell and George are at work, Annie uses
George's cell phone,
which means he doesn't take it to work, which is...
I'm more of a fan of the idea that she poofed to the hospital, opened his unsecured locker, took his phone, and poofed back home.
So she texts Owen and is like, hey, can you come look at the sink?
It's making more noise than normal.
I'll be home at like da-da-da time. You can come see it then. Da-da-da-da-da. And the thing is...
George is not George.
George is not going to be home.
Yeah.
So at said time... Owen and his new girlfriend, the girl that she thought...
Janie Harris.
Yeah, Janie Harris, the girl she thought he was fucking, show up.
Yep.
And he's confused because he thinks George is supposed to be there.
He calls out for George. George doesn't respond. He's like, okay, I guess I'll do what I came here to do. And since coming in the door, he's been trying to send Janie back out into the car. He's just like, go wait in the car. It's going to be a while. I don't know what I'm doing. And she's just like, I'm going to watch you fill it. Self-repair. It's going to be great.
And he steps around the corner because he's like, oh, the TV's on. And he looks, and Annie is hiding right beside the TV.
Yeah.
And he looks directly at her and then turns to Jenny and goes, did you say something?
Yeah.
Because he can't see her.
Yes.
And this causes Annie to have like a little bit of a break. Like,
yeah. Also, he turns off their television, which seems kind of rude. Maybe they left it on for a reason.
Yeah. It's one of like the best ways to deter burglars.
Yeah, exactly. He's encouraging people to break into the house that he's renting out. It's very rude.
He then goes to look at the sink, realizes he has no idea what he's doing.
Doesn't do a single fucking thing to the sink. Stares at it and is like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But you know what? Respect. There are 2 times to call it quits when doing any like form of DIY or whatever. Step 1.
You don't know what step 1 is.
When you have no idea what you're doing, you say no. The only other time to give up is when you've actually broken the thing. And that's not because you're choosing to give up, it's because you don't have anything else you can do.
Yeah, and honestly, in 2008, when phones weren't like, tap, 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 oh, look, a YouTube video that shows me how to do this. Much more reasonable to be like, nope, I give up, gonna call a plumber.
Yeah, but I mean, it's honestly super simple. Like, just on a base idea, if you're checking it with, if you think you can do it, the minimum that you're going to probably be able to do without actual plumber's tools or being a plumber is take the U-pipe out, check for any clogs there, see if there's any clogs down the pipe that you're not actually going to have access to, but you might be able to like use a drain snake to get something out of, or you just use a rotor drain hook, like the ones that are motorized and go in farther.
Oh, yes.
But most people don't normally have those, but I think you can rent them from some places, but like you really only have two options as not a plumber, and they're not hard.
But anyways, he gives up on doing the plumbing and turns to leave and runs directly into George, who was just talking to Annie.
And George is just like, what the fuck?
Because George came in the door, turned to the living room, sees Annie, and he's like freaking out, pointing at the kitchen, and he's like, what? And then he turns and there's Owen, and Owen's like, oh, you are here.
Yeah.
And George is like, oh yeah, what are you doing here? And they have this awkward conversation where Owen's like, you texted me. And George is like,
oh yeah, I did text you.
And I told you to come here.
When I'm not home.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the thing I did. And that kind of ends their scene. And while that's happening...
Kind of. But Owen goes, I'll be back with a plumber. I'll make sure to do it when you're not home.
Yeah, and while all that scene was happening, Mitchell was having a conversation with Herrick, the show's bishop.
Herrick seems fine. I don't hate Herrick. We don't get a lot of him, so I can't say I hate him.
Yeah.
But he is no bishop, mainly because of the actor that plays Bishop. Anyways, though, they do have this conversation in the cafeteria. It's late at night, apparently, so
yeah.
I guess this is I don't know when this is, because like it happens during the same scene.
Yeah, actually it happened before we got that scene.
Okay, so it happens before Owen shows up.
It's unclear when it happens. It just happens at a point.
Yeah, and they have this conversation. Essentially, Herrick's like, you should come back into the fold. You need us. We need you.
Well, at first, Mitchell is very aggressive towards Herrick. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? I told Seth to tell you you can't recruit at the hospital. And Herrick's like, what are you talking about? This is just a social call.
And also, Seth's an idiot. I didn't tell him to come here and recruit.
Yeah. Why would I do that? And anyways, we wouldn't just turn anyone unwillingly. I would not rather let people choose this gift. Like,
and then, obviously, Mitchell's like, it's not a gift. Stop calling it a gift.
Yeah, and then Herrick goes to get a hot chocolate, asks the cashier about the type of people she sees, and she talks about the parents of children in the pediatrics ward.
Because she works the overnight shift in a hospital cafeteria. Her two main types of customers are people that work in the hospital and parents who are there for their children.
Yeah.
And Herrick's like, if we went to the children's ward, I bet you any of those parents would agree to not only let us turn their child into a vampire, but also turn themselves into vampires.
Yeah, I mean, before he says that, there was a decent close to the conversation with the cashier, which is he goes to pay her. She's just like, no, it's on the house. Which I'd like to point out, Herrick's a cop. That wasn't mentioned. He is a cop, much like Bishop is. So it's unclear if she's just like, it's a cop, you're fine, you can take it, or if she's like, oh,
vampire radiance.
Yeah,
like charming
and
her.
as they're leaving, Mitchell's like, what was that? More tricks? To which Herrick's just like, no,
because he mentions more tricks because Herrick's very first introduction is him doing quarter coin tricks.
Yep.
In front of a bunch of staff waiting on Mitchell to show up.
Yep. And Herrick says like, no, that was manners.
And then he goes on a spiel about how offering immortality doesn't have to be a curse. You can offer it to somebody who wants it. Yeah. And you're not telling me that if we go upstairs to any of those dying children and offer them
and their parents immortality,
that they're not going to take it.
Yeah.
Because it is a gift.
We can offer it to people and their loved ones.
Because it is, even though you don't see it as a gift, Mitchell, it is. Eternal life is a gift.
Yeah.
Herrick is like, I know he's on the whole vampire should be public thing.
Yeah.
But he's also like steps removed from like just being a legitimate cult leader. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what vampire leaders are a lot of the time.
So from this, we shortly cut to Lauren's wake where they're planting a tree for her.
Yeah. George says he's going. He tries to get Mitchell to go. Mitchell refuses. And then we see it.
Not a wake, it's a memorial, sorry.
Yeah.
Where they're planting a tree for her on the hospital grounds with a plaque. Yep. But after the memorial, in a out-of-the-way room in the hospital, Lauren confronts George.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, did you enjoy my memorial? Did Mitchell not tell you what he did to me? Well, she doesn't actually mention Mitchell yet.
Yeah. Look, it's just the same intimidation that Rebecca did to Josh.
Except it's better because...
Except it's so much better.
Lauren doesn't have like the insanity that Rebecca's character has. Like, Rebecca feels like she's like snapped. Lauren is calm, collected, and...
She just is living that bon vivant lifestyle.
Like, she's specifically like, I'm going to make you feel what I felt in that moment when you realize that all the monsters from under your bed have been real the whole time. Like, it's such...
Yeah. And then she goes by him, she's like, wait a minute. Shouldn't you be, like, pissing your pants right now in fear and everything? normally this is where you would scream or something like that, right? And then George is like, Mitchell did this to you, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, And then she steps up and sniffs him, and she's like, oh, a werewolf. How funny. And she just leaves.
Yeah, she walks off. And then we cut to George confronting Mitchell in the hallway.
Yeah.
And being very loud about how you can't just go around killing our friends and turning them into monsters.
What's the entire point of this whole thing we're doing then? It's the same argument that Josh and Aiden have in the US version. Probably because it's a very good moment.
Yeah, it's like an excellent moment.
But there's better catharsis here because in the US version, Josh just slams Aiden up against a wall. Here, George just straight out punches Mitchell in the face.
Yeah. And also, I think this is a stronger version because even in the US version, Josh was still like trying to keep it like quiet enough that
he was doing whisper yells.
But here, George is just like legitimately so pissed he doesn't care that there are people walking by hearing him. He's like, because in his mind, it doesn't matter anymore. Like,
Mitchell has already fucked them over.
Yeah, like for Josh, he's like, I'm still a werewolf. I have to keep that hidden. But George is like, we were trying to live a human life. You fucked that. What's the point in hiding anything?
Yeah. Now, so then George walks off shaking his hand in pain because he doesn't punch people.
He just punched a pile of granite.
Yeah. And then Becca walks up behind Mitchell, slips on the floor. She manages to balance herself.
Because Mitchell was mopping the floor before George punched him.
And she asks him out to drinks, and Mitchell hesitates for a moment, and then it's just like, his hands are shaking. She asks to get him out of smoking. He's like, I'm starting to think once a smoker, always a smoker. And that's how the end of the scene. It's him saying he's going to kill her, basically.
Yeah.
Now, there was a moment we forgot, though.
Oh, did we?
Yes, with after Owen leaves the apartment with Janie, Annie, and George. Annie's very upset. George is trying to comfort her. And they just bond over how both their traumas, her death and his being turned into a werewolf, made them lose everything. And then they both re-experienced that exact same pain. Her just now seeing Owen with someone else. And apparently George ran into his ex as well, and she was with someone else at a point.
In episode 0, yeah.
Yeah, after he had to bail because he was a werewolf.
Yes. It's the same plot from episode 1 of American Being Human, but instead of running into his sister, he runs into his ex-girlfriend who is now with another woman. So, same plot, just different relationship.
Yeah.
I read too much about the show. Even before we decided to review it, I read a bunch of it and watched the first couple episodes.
But from here, we don't actually see Becca and Mitchell out for drinks yet. George is at work, and he's asked by assumingly the charge nurse for the night.
Yeah. She's like, do you think this is a 3 or a 5? And she's on the phone.
Yeah, and he's like, I guess it's a 3. And then the nurse is like, yeah, but she's basically just complaining because she really needs to know.
Because it's for somebody's medicine, like when they were last given their dose and when they should get it now.
And Becca, her handwriting's not good. She's like, well, call her. And she's like, well, she's not picking up her cell phone. And he's like, okay.
And she left on a date with your friend.
Yeah.
And he's like, which friend? And she's like, the one with the attractive face.
Yeah. And so George ends up taking off trying to hunt them down at whatever bar
running through the streets of Bristol with no idea where they are.
And then we got to the bar, and it's just Mitchell and Becca talking. And they're just flirting.
They're just flirting, and eventually she's like, hey, my roommates are out of town. Do you want to come over?
Yeah. And he looks like he's about to agree when who should show up but Lauren.
And Lauren, like, kind of sits down, and she's talking to Becca. She's like, because Becca's like, I think I know you. I think I've seen you before. And Becca's like, oh, yeah, I was just in the newspaper recently.
Yeah.
And the whole time, Mitchell's like, we're not together. And she's like, no, we dated once. Although, for me, it was just a bottle of wine and a bag of Doritos.
It wasn't even really a date. Yeah. And Mitchell puts up with a lot less shit than Aiden does. And he just picks her up and drags her out of the bar. And he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, it's after, she has the same line as Rebecca where she's like, I want to see her face when she figures it out.
Yeah.
And Mitchell, like, grabs her by their shoulders and pushes her out of the bar. And he's like, the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. And she's like, well, you turned me into this. I woke up surrounded by strangers, which implies that he didn't turn her.
He's like, well, then let's go. We can get away.
I know places where we can go. She's like, you can't escape. And he's like, they don't care about the small towns. The places where they can be exposed. And she's like, I don't want
to escape. Like,
I want to feel their blood on my face, in my hands. I want to rip them limb from limb.
I want to kill my family and my ex-lovers and my friends. And I want them to know the same fear I felt. And like, it's a similar diatribe to Rebecca's, but it's
delivered better.
Yeah. God, this is the thing that I have. I think that some of the writing in the UK version has been better, like for dialogue at least.
Yeah.
And I think some of the like minor characters
are just better performers,
better actors. Holy shit!
The actress playing Becca, I like more than I like who played the
I don't remember her name
secondary love interest for the first episode in the US version. And Lauren is a better character
than Rebecca by a mile.
Yeah, in its portrayal, but. So he shoves her off and to try to get her to leave, and he goes back inside the bar.
And he's like, look, I don't think I can go home with you. It's really not you. It's me.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's the first time any man had said that to me before sex. And he
Yeah.
goes, look, I just have my own things I have to deal with. And let me walk you to the taxis.
And
goes,
she tries to refuse, and she's like, please, I want to make sure you're safe. And she's like, okay, fine, let me go to the bathroom first.
Mm-hmm. And then she is attacked by Becca.
Yeah.
We hear screams.
We cut to George, who runs up, finds her. Well, actually, he gets attacked by Lauren, who chokes him.
Throws him against a wall.
Yeah. And then when he falls down, he sees Lauren, and then Mitchell runs out. They try to save her, and Lauren, very much in a similar situation to Rebecca in the U.S. version, she's like, Mitchell could save her. All he has to do is let her drink some of his blood. And George is like, can you? And Mitchell's just like struggling with it, and she ends up dying.
Mm.
They find that out when they get to the hospital, where George is now just like, well, that's it. They'll connect.
Literally the same scene from the American version. They'll connect her to Lauren and Lauren to you, and this is all over. And
Mitchell's was like, no, there are things in place to stop them from happening. This isn't the first time it's happened. There are branches of them everywhere. Looks at Herrick down the hallway as a cop talking to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
However, George has a much more like astounded reaction to this than Josh did in the US version, and we linger on it a bit longer.
Yeah.
And then from there we go back to their apartment, where George says basically the same thing that Josh did, which is, I forgot what all the other vampires are like, what type of monsters they are, and that he has to struggle to not be that constantly.
Yeah, every moment of every day he's struggling to not be a monster when I'm just a monster one time a month.
Yeah.
And it's the same. I mean, it makes sense that the shows are so similar.
Arguably, from the first 2 episodes, the most poignant dialogue is just like lifted from the British version.
Yeah, this 100% makes sense because the North American version of the show is the showrunners for that watched the first season of the British show.
Yep.
They intentionally didn't watch past that because they wanted to make a show that diverged and had its own personality.
Yep.
And they very successfully did that. The show has its own style and personality, but the first episode or so has a lot of like overlapping themology and character dialogue.
So we end this episode really with George talking to Annie in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. He's wearing a robe and stuff as he's having a conversation with her. And Annie seems depressed. And he's like, you know what? We should all go out for drinks. Let me go get clothes on and we'll head out. And he's just like, no, I really don't want to. I don't want to leave the house. I just want to be here. It's safe here. I'm comfortable here.
Yeah, because after she like hid herself from Owen,
no one else can see her but other supernatural people. She has relapsed.
And she doesn't really want to leave the house anymore. Yep. Like where in the American version, Sally can't leave the house.
Yeah.
Annie could, but now really struggles to.
Yeah, she's dealing with her trauma again. It's resurfaced.
Mm-hmm.
So George like quietly concedes and they head into the living room where they all sit down. But we see outside the window the guy with the white hat from the forest is watching George.
Yep.
End of episode.
End of episode 1. Justice, what do you think of Being Human UK episode 1?
Honestly, the vibe feels much more sitcom-y.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that.
Where, like, it's more of a sitcom drama, but the US version leans much more heavily into the drama idea of it, which makes sense for the American market at the time. I don't know about the British television market at the time, but the drama aspect of the US version matches its market.
I don't know much about the market of British dramas at the time, but what I can tell you is the show initially aired on BBC 3.
Yes.
And did not do very well. It pulled the same type of numbers that AEW pulls now in 2023, which in 2008 was terrible because cable was everywhere in 2008.
Yeah, understandable.
And so it didn't get renewed for a season 2 instantly. Instead, the next year, the showrunners and like the people behind it bet on it more heavily and got it pushed to BBC 1 in a primetime slot.
Understandable.
And they re-aired the entire first season and the numbers like quadrupled.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how when you put a show in a better quality time spot on a better channel, you tend to get more views. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens.
It's the idea that if you tell enough people strongly enough, often enough that something is popular or good, they'll agree with you.
It's like how Nickelodeon...
It's the only reason why Koosh Balls ever existed.
Well, it's like how Nickelodeon was like, oh, season 4 of Korra had awful ratings. Nobody watched it. And it's like, yeah, because you took it off TV and put it on streaming on a website, not a streaming service, and didn't tell anybody about it. Of course the numbers were terrible.
Yeah.
It's the same idea.
But overall, I like it and I would watch more.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I think while the American version has a really strong handle on Josh and Aiden's analogies between their struggles and their supernatural aspects, Sally feels kind of like left in the wind.
Yes, especially in the first episode.
Whereas in the British version, Annie's really is about trauma. Like,
yeah, they all feel like they have a fairly decent grasp on it, and they're all starting from the same point at the start of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship between them all having been like a kind of indiscriminate time to us as the viewer of how long they've been together in this house allows for more of a friendship vibe, and it allows for more jokes and sarcasm while still actively dealing with the drama of the situation as well.
Can I tell you what one of my favorite parts of this is?
Sure.
The fact that George and Mitchell are just established as having been friends and having known each other.
They're just good friends.
In the American version, it's much less clear how well they know each other.
Yeah, in the US version, it feels much more like, look, I know what you are, you know what I am. We vaguely get along. We should get in the apartment together because it'll just be easier for both of us.
But in the UK version, it's very strongly, these are friends.
So we've decided to get in an apartment together. We just so happen to be a werewolf and a vampire.
But yeah, no, I like this first episode. The comedy is more there than the American version.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. I would watch more. I don't want to compare it directly to the American version because they are different shows.
You're just upset that Herrick isn't played by Mark Pellegrino.
That, and I miss the Sams.
Yeah.
Honestly, I miss Malik too. I love her.
True. They're all good.
In the first episode, she's not bringing a whole lot to the table, but her character evolution as that series goes on.
Understandable.
But that wouldn't be fair to these people because I'm not giving them a chance. Tully and Aiden and... Not Tully. That's Tavali, Aiden, and I don't remember Annie's actress's name.
No idea. But, so, should we go on to episode 2?
Yes, let's start Being Human, Series 1, Episode 2.
Do you have a title for this one?
I do, but it's not an official title. It's fanon still. The episode's title is Tully. But that was, again, voted on in a fan poll. It doesn't actually have an official title.
Okay. So, the intro for this episode, we see George transforming into a werewolf, and our narration is provided by Mitchell. And it's a very, very long block of dialogue, but it very much just... So, we talked about how in the Being Human US or North American version, the transformation is very werewolf in London.
Yeah,
American werewolf in London. Just super painful and gross. And that's still true in this. But Mitchell's narration lets us know just how bad it is.
Yeah.
I'm only going to read part of it, but...
Fair enough.
The opening narration is, he should be dead within 30 seconds. The werewolf heart is about 2/3 the size of a human's. But in order to shrink, first it has to stop. In other words, he has a heart attack. All the internal organs are smaller. So while he's having his heart attack, he's having liver and kidney failure too. And if he stops screaming, it's not because the pain has dulled. His throat, gullet, and vocal cords are tearing and reforming. He literally can't make a sound. And then there's a whole bunch more, but it's so good at like describing just how painful and terrifying of a moment this would be to experience that I really appreciate it. Just hammering home, yeah, no, this is a fucking curse. This is a terrible thing.
I'm actually just going to pick up. I'm not going to pick up right where you left off.
Okay.
But it continues. Anyone else would have died of shock long ago, but it won't let him. And that's the pain I find most remarkable. It drags him through the fire and keeps him alive and even conscious to endure every second. Nothing like this could just evolve. Is it the fingerprint of God? An impossible lethal curse spread by tooth and claw. Victim begets victim begets victim. It's so cruel. It's perfect. God, the writing for this.
I am kind of sad. Like the North American narrations are also good.
Yes.
But the opening narration for episode 1 and episode 2 of the UK version are just more poetic.
Just next level.
And they fit, and I like them so much. Like, they're obviously not necessary, but man, do I enjoy them.
Yep. And so, episode 2 then starts off with George waking up after having run wild in the forest because he still doesn't have his isolation room.
Yeah, no.
There's a man standing over him, the man with the white hat, standing over him with a bag and being like, hey, how you going to get home? Didn't see a car. Don't seem to have any way of getting home.
I assume you ring someone to bring it all to you.
I don't know where you keep the quarter or the coin.
The coin, yeah. And George just doesn't want a single fucking thing to do with this, so he gets up to leave. And then Tully, we learned his name is Tully. He's like, George, I know what you are. You're a werewolf.
And George is like, why would you say that? That's it. That's madman talk.
And Tully's just like, because I'm one too.
Yeah.
Look, you can smell it. Your senses are more heightened now. You can smell, hear, see, taste, all of it better. You can tell what I am. And George is like, cool. Thanks for the clothes, because I was in the bag like it's thrown at his feet. But no.
Mm-hmm. I will say, before this, the opening narration was the transformation sequence of George.
Yes.
We do get the werewolf, the full face of the werewolf again.
Yeah.
It's slightly better this time, but
because
it's still
a darker image. The shots are grainier because they don't have the right light balancing. It's a pulled back, less focused shot, and it's also a profile. So it's a better shot and it looks better. But man, does it give like still late 80s, early 90s monster movie vibes.
But yeah, transformation just looks a little bit cleaner this time. And like you said, it's because of the camera work mainly. But yeah, we cut to the morning. He gets the bag of clothes from Tully.
Yeah, and this entire time, Tully's just trying to be like, look, man, I've been around longer. I can teach you some tricks. And George is like, I don't need tricks. This is a thing I just have to fucking suffer for a bit every month. And then I forget about it. I'm gonna go. Don't fucking bother me again. And then George takes off to his house. But when he gets there, it's filled with unexpected guests.
Yes, because unbeknownst to George, Mitchell has decided to start inviting the neighbors over for brunch, I guess, or
I don't fucking know. I think it's tea. I honestly think it's tea because it looks like they had he's taking them digestives out, so he's taking them out cookies. They have a teapot on the counter.
Honestly, what I thought this was like jumping, I thought this was the neighborhood watch arc from the American one. And I was like, this is so weird to have in episode 2.
You know, I think he just invited them all around for tea. George is immediately not comfortable with that. Also, he's still extremely dirty. He has clothes on, but he's just covered in dirt.
So he goes upstairs or into the kitchen. Yeah, he goes into the kitchen where he talks
After being forcefully introduced to people, to which none of these people I really remember. There's an old couple. There's a lady who was a former Miss Isle of Wight. And then there is the neighbor with the extreme punk look who is just obsessed with Vin Diesel. Knows way too much about Vin Diesel.
And to be fair, why wouldn't you be? Vin Diesel is just sheer perfection given human form.
I mean, honestly, it's the mid-2000s. The family meme isn't a thing yet.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, he's done a few Fast and Furious movies, but not
you know him for Triple X, and no one really cares about that. But the Chronicle of Riddick movies, and you're like, those are good.
Yeah.
And then maybe the Witch Hunter movie's out. I don't fucking know, but no one watched it anyway, so who knows?
I think Tokyo Drift was 2009.
Yeah.
So
he's been in one movie?
Two,
yeah.
2, I think.
Yeah.
No, he's not in the second Fast. He's not in another Fast and Furious movie until 4, discounting the cameo at the end of Tokyo Drift.
Cool, yeah. You don't really know him from anything besides Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah. Jesus.
Better times.
Family.
But yeah, no, so...
Speaking of family, after he goes in the kitchen and has a talk with Annie, who none of the neighbors can see her because she's regressed, like we talked about at the end of last episode, he goes back into the living room where he immediately sees Tully.
Yeah, so he pulls Tully up out of the chair and just drags him out of the house.
Before we get into his and Tully's conversation outside, I do want to mention one of the things he said to Annie, though. He's like, you can't just invite people over like that. They're British. We have to spend 15 years nodding at each other before you can even have a conversation.
Yeah, also, before he gets that great line to go back into the living room, he does question what the fuck is up with Mitchell because he has been in his room not leaving since Becca died. And now suddenly neighbors.
And Annie's like, well, maybe something in him snapped.
Yeah, but so once he drags Holly outside, he's just like, what the fuck are you doing here? I told you not to follow me.
She didn't say something snapped. She said maybe he took a bump to the head.
Oh, yeah. My Nana did. She got hit by a radio-controlled airplane.
At a fair.
And just became obsessed with pygmy goats. Yeah. And he's like, I don't understand a single word that just came out of your mouth.
So good. Yeah, so he's outside with Tully. He's like, I told you not to follow me. And Tully's like,
I didn't need to follow you. I've known where you've lived for weeks.
And to be fair, he also didn't say, don't follow me. He said, don't try to follow me.
Yeah.
If you successfully follow someone, that's not trying. It's succeeding.
But the entire time, Tully's just like, look, I've been around longer. I can teach you some things to help you with this.
And honestly, I really wanted to meet your friends. A vampire and a werewolf being friends, much less roommates.
Yeah. And eventually, George agrees, and Tully comes back inside to meet them.
George specifically agrees because Tully's like, not only can I teach you how to make it safer for you,
I can make it safer for everyone around you.
And...
Because he asks what George's biggest fear is, and George is like, what do you think? The fact that I'll bite someone or kill someone. Yeah.
And Tully's like, look, let me meet your friends, and I'll teach you how to be safer for everyone.
Yep. And immediately, Annie and Mitchell are on board with Tully.
Yeah, Annie is not just on board, she's insanely just happy to have somebody else around that she can interact with.
She's enjoying his stories because he's just talking about how he's been roughing it, living out in the woods, in the wild.
How he heard about an animal attack and was like, oh no, that's a werewolf, so he's been
looked it up in a paper, managed to find George, and eventually found some clothes in a forest, figured out this was where he was, and then waited and found him after the moon.
Yep, but George is Tully ends up being like, look, I've just been sleeping outside.
Yeah.
I've been crashing with people every now and then, but I don't want to impose. And
Mitchell's just like, no, it's fine, you can stay. And George's like, no, you can't.
And anyway, they end up letting him sleep on the couch.
After George and Mitchell have an aside, well, Mitchell's just like, I don't understand why you're not jumping at the chance to have someone to help you with this. I just don't get it. So Tully gets to stay, even though George is very vocally against it.
Yeah, not only is George very against it, Mitchell isn't just for it. He's he has segmented himself from his own people.
Yeah, everyone. So he's just like, I don't know why you would choose to be alone
when you can have somebody who knows what you're going through. You don't even know him, give him a chance. But as we get to Tully like mentoring and teaching George.
Yeah.
Some of it's like the same stuff that this, as the analog character Ray from the US version teaches Josh. It's also got a lot of like social dynamics to it, where Tully is not just teaching George how to be a better werewolf, a safer werewolf. He's also teaching Josh how to be a misogynist. Sorry, George how to be a misogynist and a bully and like kind of a shitty human being. And because George is socially awkward to begin with and like has been socially isolated because of his werewolfism, lycanthropy, he takes to it. He's like, oh yeah, you know, this guy's actually managing to help me in this way. Why can't he be the one to help me in these ways as well? Yeah. And the entire time Tully's also like hammering a wedge between him and Mitchell. He's like, you know, Mitchell's a predator too. I don't know why he hasn't been teaching you this stuff. Like,
or like, oh, I don't know why he hasn't helped you get a girlfriend yet. Like,
get
clearly he's getting laid all the fucking time. Have you seen him?
Yeah, like, and it's just trying to drive a wedge. Yep. George tries to use the tactics Tully uses to pick up a woman in a restaurant on this nurse. Yeah. Who he had an argument with the day before, a couple days before.
It was like a brief spat. George had to take a patient to her wing of the hospital, the area she was,
charge nurse of.
I assume she's the charge nurse for that area, yeah.
Or doctor even. No, I think she's a nurse.
I mean, it looked like she sat down at the nurse's station.
Yeah.
But I mean, that doesn't preclude doctors, but it's normally...
But like, the doctor's order was wrong. This patient wasn't supposed to go here.
Well, it's not that the doctor's order was wrong. The doctor was just shunting the patient out of his wing to someone else. Even though she didn't have any beds she could use because she was filled up.
Yeah, so this leads to a spat between them. Yeah. And she's really kind of mean to him, but like...
Yeah, because he's like, well, what do you want me to do? And she's like, just leave. He's like, well, what about... And she's like, how long have you worked here? And he's like, about a year. And she's like, huh, you think you would know better by now.
Yep. So then we have a scene where George and Tully are at a diner, and Tully uses condescending, rude negging to pick up on a waitress there.
Okay, so honestly, vaguely with the way he dresses, especially with the way he acts...
He's a chav.
Yeah, he's just a guy who never grew up from being a chav. I say grew up because I think from like my understanding of the term chav, it's very much kind of like a douchey connotation, but like generally aimed at like a younger group of people who are generally chavs.
From what I understand of Britishisms, anybody can be a chav.
Yeah.
It's just
more likely to be young people.
It's also more socially acceptable for a 17-year-old high schooler.
He looks like a upper 30s, lower 40s chav, and that's not a good vibe.
And so, like I said, he insults this woman and negs her into like going on a date with him. Yep. And so when this nurse comes to apologize, her name is Nina, comes to apologize to George for like snapping at him when he was just following doctor's orders, which is what he has to do for his job. He doesn't just use the same tactics that Tully used, but like the exact same like wording and such.
Especially like Tully's guiding from behind him.
Yeah.
Who's mouthing the things he should say.
It's like, you can take me out for a drink later.
Yeah, except George being awkward is stumbling over it and everything.
And he's like, yeah, as a way to like apologize. Yeah. And eventually she's like, oh yeah, no, I can't do it right now because I'm on my period, but maybe next week. He's like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. And then she's like, okay, I don't know how you're not getting it. I'm making fun of you.
No, she never comes out and says it because he doesn't put that together.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he's like, wait, really? And she says, do chicken have teeth? And he's just like, uh-huh. And she's like, in fact, I'm so happy about this. I can't wait to tell all of the staff, everyone around me this.
How misogynistic you are. And because she literally does say that. Yeah. And you'll be getting a lot of attention from them after this.
Yeah. And then she leaves and Tully walks up and George is like, did that go? What? That was a good thing. And Tully's like, yep.
And he's like, do chicken have teeth? And Tully goes, oh, they have like ridges, which are kind of like teeth.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the basis of this is as Tully becomes more ingrained into George's life and George respects him more and like takes him more on like a mentor figure, he also is slowly grinding away the goodwill he has with Annie and Mitchell.
Yes.
But speaking of Mitchell, he's got his own subplot on his hands.
He has to deal with Lauren, who is trying to get him to drink blood, trying to incite him to act like a vampire.
And he is not vibing with it. She stops by the house.
Yep.
And it attempts to like lure him into quote unquote playtime. Yeah. Which he says, I can't separate playtime from feeding time. And she's like, oh, that's not a problem. Like we can do both.
Yeah. And he's like, no, go. And throws her out of his house. Now, we do get a point here where we learn that vampires in this world have to be invited into homes. Because she shows up and he's like, what are you doing? She's like, well, we can't have the conversation outside. It's like, you're not getting inside my house. She's like, well, you have to invite me in. Or I guess we could have this conversation outside.
And so he invites her in, but then he forces her out of the house afterwards. Yep. We also have some stuff between Tully and Annie where initially Annie's like, after George and Mitchell go to work, Tully's making breakfast. Yeah. And Annie comes downstairs and he's like, oh, hey, I was making you breakfast. And she's like, I can't eat.
But do you mind if I like sit here and watch you eat? It reminds me of happy memories with like my fiance.
Because she used to watch Owen eat because she would get up earlier in the morning, fix herself food.
And then fix him some food.
and they would talk over
and,
breakfast. Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. And like he keeps like trying to make a move on her, and she like continually like kind of pushes him away.
Yep.
Until it all blows up.
Yeah, it happens throughout like a small buildup of scenes, but like this episode has like a bunch of small scenes that are all happening simultaneously.
Yeah, because like him and Tully and George both go to this abandoned property out in the woods.
Where Tully shows him, hey, you take this chicken
on a string,
run it around like a mile around this shed all night. Your wolf will just follow it in circles.
And when you transform, you want to like have some bodies of water to boundary yourself because you can't cross running water as a wolf.
If you can do it, you try to do it around some water.
So we get these scenes back and forth, and like I was saying, some of these scenes are establishing Tully trying to like.
Honestly, the thematic idea is just how each person interacts with Tully. For Annie, for a lot of it, it's her and Tully having a pleasant conversation, and then Tully taking it to like a weirdly flirty thing that she doesn't seem to be reciprocating. With George, it's George finally coming around to learning some werewolf tips from him, and with Mitchell, it's really just Tully being a bad roommate, eating all the food, sprawling out on the couch, scratching his balls while watching television,
taking a shit right before he needs to take a shower.
Shit.
Right before Mitchell needs to take a shower for work.
Yeah. Literally, Mitchell's problems with Tully, the only personal problems he seems to have is just Tully's a bad roommate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then this escalates to Tully. He grabs Annie, which is wild that he can grab her by the arm. And she's like, hey, can you let go? That hurts. He goes, oh, it hurts. You can feel that.
Well, so he first comments like, oh, you're kind of squishy.
Mm-hmm. Because he was like, I never see you change clothes. You're always in these gray, like...
Yeah. Why don't I ever see you out of these clothes?
Yeah. It's not, why don't you change clothes? It's a little creepier than that.
But as he's holding her, explaining, oh, well, you are squishy. You're kind of cold. Like, you just came from the snow. We see his hand tighten. And she goes, that hurts. And he's like, oh, that hurts. And she's like, it hurts. Owen, stop. Owen, her fiance.
Which is why you assume Owen killed her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then he's just like, what? And she's like, I mean, it didn't hurt, but I saw your hand there, so it felt like it should hurt.
And he's like, well, if you could feel that, I wonder what else you could feel.
A kiss?
A fuck? And he like pushes her up against the fridge.
And she's like, can you back up? Please get away from me.
And he goes to kiss her and she vanishes because she's a ghost.
Yep. He also has a horrible line about like each time when she was like initially calling him out before he backed her up against the fridge, he's like, I'm just messing around with you. I'm just joking.
Yeah. Every time she calls him out, he's like, oh no, I'm just joking. It's cool.
And then as he's backing her up to the fridge, because he's just like, why are you acting like this? He's like, well, it's something along the lines of like, you
keep leading me on, is what he says. He just says that at one point.
I mean, he does, but it's in this thing where he like complains about being around a vampire, it almost being the full moon. His balls feel like they're filled with cement, and he keeps getting
led on by a corpse.
He's getting mixed signals from a fucking dead girl.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So she poofed.
Yep.
And she appears out on the street panicking. She's asking anybody who she's
legitimately just having an anxiety attack.
Well, yeah, because she was nearly sexually assaulted by a werewolf.
Yeah. And now no one can see her to help her. She wants to go to the hospital to find her friends.
Her roommates, yeah. And she sees an ambulance, so she chases after it on foot.
Yep.
And eventually comes to a crime scene where a man has been murdered.
And on the stoop, crying,
laughing hysterically
is Lauren. And then Herrick walks up, yanks her by the arm and drags her over. And the entire time Lauren's just spouting like, you should have seen it. It was so adorable. And the sound he made the cutest gasp.
And Herrick's like, we have rules. There are ways we do things. You can't just kill people.
And she starts coughing and he's like, I have a plan and you're fucking with it.
Mm-hmm. And Herrick sees Annie.
And just like smiles at her knowingly.
I don't know why he recognizes her, but he then starts going tick-tock. Because there's been a themology that
the vampires are up to something. It's their time now.
They've been beating up. Before Tully moves in with them, he claims he's been beat up by vampires more frequently now than ever before.
Yeah.
There's word out of town about vampires talking about their time is coming.
Yeah, and when it was mentioned to Mitch earlier, he's just like, vampires are constantly fucking saying that.
Ever since like the very first crusade, you have vampires going.
Yeah, nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah, but this causes Annie to run back the opposite way.
Yeah. And then we kind of leave her when she runs away, and we see Mitchell walking down the street back towards the house, who should spot him from like out of a covered alley.
Yeah, alley, a drainage ditch or something.
It's Annie, and she's like, Mitchell, and runs up, gives him a hug.
Yeah, she's sobbing.
Yeah. We don't see her explain to him what happens, but he storms into his house and yells at Tully to get out.
Yeah, he's like, get the fuck out right now.
Yeah, and Tully's literally just posturing me like, what the fuck are you going to do about it?
What's George George going to think? And
Mitchell's like, I don't give a fuck. I'll talk to him. Get the fuck out.
And then George gets home.
Yeah. And George does not take this well. He's like, no, this guy's showing me how to do shit. Why the fuck aren't you ever doing anything for me? Why aren't you showing me how to deal with this shit? Why aren't you helping me with women? And
yeah, and like
Mitchell's like,
because Mitchell said, oh, Tully's leaving.
Yeah.
And George is like, why? And Tully's like, I have no idea why they'd want to kick me out. I don't know at all. And Mitchell goes to be like...
He's starting with the small things. He's like, he's messy, he's sloppy, he eats all the food. And then Annie steps in to explain the fact that he assaulted her.
And George blows up and says the most disgusting line of dialogue this character has in this first 2 episodes by a mileage.
And that line is the horrible, and I bet she liked every moment of it.
Not liked. I bet she loved every moment of it.
Yeah.
Because, let's victim blame the ghost who was almost raped.
Yeah.
It's not cool. But George and Tully leave then because it's the night before the full moon or night of the full moon.
It's the night before.
Okay.
Because he ends up going back.
Yeah, and they head out to prepare for their full moon transformation.
Yep. And Tully's just telling George about how proud he is that he chose to stand up and that he's becoming, more of what he's supposed to be, embracing the wolf, being more true to himself. And George is just like, I shouldn't have said what I said. Like, that was a horrible thing to say. I was an asshole. And Tully's just like, no, you said what needed to be said. You established yourself like you should.
Yeah, and this is also when Tully drops the bomb.
Yeah, that he is the one who turned George into a werewolf. And that he's been searching for him for 2 years.
He didn't remember turning George into a werewolf, but when he read the news article about a tourist being dead and another one surviving an attack, he knew what it meant. And Tully tries to sympathize with George because he's like, becoming a werewolf took everything away from me. It took my family away from me. You're the first connection I have as a werewolf. And George is just like...
And I saw what you had and I wanted it. And... George is like, so you were lying about everything. You were faking it. You had no idea what you were doing.
And Tully, is on the verge of a breakdown. He's like, I just couldn't be alone anymore. And
I had a wife. I had a kid. And they're kind of struggling with each other. And George slams Tully down on a table and just, glares at him and then pushes off of him and leaves.
Tully does shout after him, I just couldn't be alone anymore.
Yeah.
But that brings us to George returning to his house.
Yep.
Where he immediately apologizes to Mitchell and Annie.
And he's like, George is gone.
And they instantly forgive him. And maybe Mitchell I could understand. The problem is solved from Mitchell's point of view. But Annie should not be that fast to forgive. Holy shit.
So there's no blatant statement of forgiveness. And we don't really dwell on the scene long. So it's hard to really decide if they forgive them or not.
And when he does walk in, he picks up a DVD off the floor. A neighbor mentioned earlier that they were going to let them borrow Casablanca.
Yeah.
Which had Mitchell excited because
Mitchell was an extra in it. But because vampires don't show up in it, the only way you can tell he's there is he knocks over a chair in a scene. And George wasn't interested in it when they brought it up, despite the fact that he's apparently a huge old school movie buff.
Classic movie fan, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this must be Casablanca. So after they have their moment of...
Yeah, they all decide they're going to go watch it, which is a moment to kind of let things sit, air out, just do something together.
That said, it is not Casablanca.
It's vampire porn.
I called it as soon as
yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, 100%. This is vampire porn. And you might be wondering, vampires don't appear on video. How do vampires make porn? Well, it's easy.
The same way as everyone else, you just can't see one of the party members.
Yeah, you make a sex tape, but only one person appears on the sex tape, and then you kill the person that appears on the sex tape.
Yeah, and the entire time, George and Annie are just like, does anyone, enjoy this? And Mitchell's like, yeah, some people do, I guess.
And they're like, why? And he's like, the same reason people enjoy porn.
Yeah. They're like, who would send this to you? And he's like, it's personal. It's Lauren. And they're just like, what? And he's like, yeah. And the entire time, they're all just like, we should turn it off. None of them turn it off.
It's because they don't have a TV remote, Justice.
Yeah.
But Annie's the one that pieces it together. She's like, oh, she's trying to draw you back in.
Yeah.
She's trying to tempt you to drink blood again. Which, this show doesn't actually address that at all.
Yeah.
What he's drinking, how is he still alive?
Yeah. In the North American version, we see that he drinks blood bags.
That he gets
from the hospital.
Yeah. So that night, or the next night.
I think it's that night, actually.
George heads out to that abandoned property where he and Tully established a home base so he can transform. And Tully's there with a noose around his neck, standing on a chair.
And he's like, I knew you'd come back. And kicks the chair out from underneath himself. And George just watches him.
Initially, George takes a step towards him.
Yeah.
Then stops and leaves the building.
Well, he stops and Tully starts to talk more. George steps closer, is half a foot away from Tully, just staring up at him. And then just turns around and walks out.
Which is what he should have kept doing. He should have just let Tully die here.
He got a good 20 feet from the shed and then turned around.
and goes back in and lifts Tully up enough so that Tully can get the noose off his head.
And he goes to leave, and then Tully grabs him. They struggle.
Werewolf fight.
Half werewolf fight.
Yeah.
George is just
werewolf.
like, let me the fuck out. We're going to change in here, and we'll try to kill each other. And in their fight, George scars Tully's face.
Then manages to shove him out of the building and block the door.
Yep.
And then the fight stops because they're in too much pain to continue the fight.
And then we cut to the next morning, and George is awake in a hoodie and wearing clothes, carrying a bag, throws it at Tully's feet, whose scar is now red and kind of infected. And it looks a lot larger than it did when it first got hit. So I assume it got torn and ripped during the transformation, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, you're done.
The first time you met me, you scratched me and turned me into a werewolf.
Yep.
Second time,
you lied to me.
The third time,
Well, there better not fucking be a third time.
And then he walks off. And honestly, this is George's like hardest moment in the show, like his most badass.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of the episode. But we cut back to the house, and Mitchell's in the kitchen digging through the trash can.
Yep.
Where he pulls out a blue DVD that was the same DVD that was the vampire porn.
Yeah.
His eyes flash black, and then his eyes return to normal. And there's a bit of a voiceover about how you can never quite go back.
Yeah.
It's a quote from Lauren earlier in the episode, referring to the Eagles song. You can check out
anytime you want, but you can never leave.
And he pulls the DVD out of the trash.
That's the end of the episode.
It is.
So, Being Human UK, or Being Human UK.
For episode 2, yeah, I like it. I guess it makes sense that the US version like samples from season 1 throughout its run, rather than just like...
Yeah, it definitely feels like the first 2 episodes of the US version are stretched out more.
Because we don't get Tully's character for a few more episodes, but I do think it makes sense the storytelling format of the UK version.
Yeah.
I don't like Tully. I think I like him less than his American version.
Yeah, because as we discussed earlier before we landed on calling him a chav, we were like, I don't know, he's just creepy and a bad vibe, where just a horribly creepy bad vibe, which Ray also has a creepy, horrible bad vibe. But in addition to that going on with Tully also has doucheiness added to it.
Yeah.
And then the moment we added douchiness to creepy bad vibe, we were just like, oh, he's a chav.
Yeah, because Ray, the Tully equivalent in the US version, is kind of like a redneck Louisiana guy.
He has Creole vibe. He has like backwoods Creole vibes that you get in like...
And he still did turn...
some weird things.
And he still is the one that turned Josh or George.
And he's an asshole.
And he's an asshole, and he's manipulative, and he's a bum. All like Tully. But what he is not...
is an attempted rapist.
And that makes Tully so much worse.
Yep.
And also, even though like he is like a pickup artist, Ray is,
we don't ever really see it, which makes it possible to be like, I don't know, maybe he actually has like some charm to him.
Yeah.
Not just, oh no, I went to a seminar once and they told me if I just insult her enough, but like, so I say a bad thing and then I say a good thing and then I say a bad thing.
It's like a compliment sandwich, but in reverse. Yeah, and I think those things makes Ray a more likable character. Tully, if he comes back like Ray does, I will be incredibly upset that he doesn't just instantly get killed.
I mean, I'll be incredibly happy when he comes back because it's like Ray, it's for that explicit reason, so he can be killed.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, no, I like the show. I will probably end up watching more of it.
Same.
It's actually less episodes, even though it's more seasons or series.
Well, like, that's why it makes sense to stretch out the North American version, because the North American version, season 1 has 13 episodes, whereas the UK version has 6 episodes in its series.
I think I did the math, and like the UK version is 36 episodes total.
Something like that.
And the American version's 52.
Yeah.
So I will probably watch this. I don't know if I will finish it, because I feel like once main characters start flaking off the show because they don't renew contracts.
I mean, it really all depends on the new characters introduced to take over. Like, if we got the equivalent of Henry as a main character, I'd be down.
Fair enough.
Like a few episodes in Henry, when he's first introduced, he's annoying.
I really like when Henry's first introduced and has all of his skin flayed off of him.
That's a few episodes in Henry.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Before that, he's just the annoying guy of like, why don't we hang out anymore? We could kill people. He's just Rebecca Part 2 to be with.
He's just Roderick Strong and...
Yeah.
But no, how about you? Would you watch more of this?
Yeah, I would.
I think that does it. There is another spin-off of Being Human that we can review at a later time, which, given that we're theming this Halloween as Being Human, we'll probably do at some point.
I don't know if I ever agreed to that, but...
we're too far in now.
But because of you saying that, my brain is now singing Making Christmas from Nightmare of Halloween, but to Being Human, it's so fun.
Well, we will probably do Becoming Human at some point, but we want to thank you for flying with us. And if you want to get in contact with us and tell us your thoughts on either of these Being Humans, or specifically your favorite British show that has had a US remake or Canadian remake, and which one you thought was better, because honestly, this happens way too often.
We really like to take your shows and make them ours.
We didn't like your tea, so we threw it in the harbor. But your television shows, we like those.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to reach out to us, you can do that in a variety of ways. Primarily on X, where we are at Copilots Review, or at our email at copilotsreview@gmail.com.
Yep. Or you can find links to both of those and other resources by going to copilotsreview.simplecast.com.
But thanks for flying with us.
And please fly again soon.